Josh Notive here, Castle Real Estate Team, Coldwell Banker. Let's talk about due diligence. Now, this will probably be the longest video in the series because of two reasons. One, it's a little tricky to explain. There's a lot of nuances. And two, I think it's really important that buyers understand this. Like I said before, you're making all the decisions. So it's important to me that I explain this in a way that you understand. So when you're making your decisions, you're making them with the correct information. So what is due diligence? Well, in North Carolina, there's a couple of things you need to know about our standard offer to purchase. One, it says that you're buying the house as is. And this is a little tricky in the front end. It seems like, oh yeah, no big deal. We walk through, it looks great. You know, I've looked at the property, you've looked at the property, and we're excited about it. And so it doesn't seem like such a big deal to make that offer saying the house is as is. But the due diligence period is a negotiated period of time that the buyer has to inspect the property or to do their due diligence. So we're going to negotiate on top of the offer price and the closing date. We're going to negotiate a due diligence period, maybe a couple, 2-3 weeks, and a due diligence fee. And we're going to talk about the fee in detail and what that looks like. So let's say we say 3 weeks. So you got 3 weeks to hire a home inspector. If you want to get the septic system, if it has one inspected, some people get an HVAC inspection, a roofing inspection. You can get a survey done to make sure that, your shed's not on the neighbor's property and the neighbor's garage isn't on your property. You can work with an insurance company to get your insurance set up. You can talk to your lender about getting your mortgage figured out. You're going to do everything you want to do during the due diligence period to make sure you want to buy this property. And the contract, so it says you're buying the house as is, but it also says that you have the right, the buyer, not the seller, the buyer has the right or the ability to terminate that contract at any time during the due diligence period. So I said a couple of weeks, but we'll actually put a date in the contract. January 15th, July 17th, October 19th, it'll be a date. And that due diligence period ends on that day at 5 p.m. So the due diligence fee, on top of negotiating a period, you're going to negotiate a fee paid to the seller. And this is important because I think about it this way. It balances the power between the seller and the buyer. So you're buying the house as is, and you can terminate anytime you want. Well, that kind of puts the seller in a situation where they take their house off the market, they're under contract with you, they can't break the contract, you can, and you're inspecting their property. So part of how this works is you pay them a due diligence fee. And I hate to say a dollar amount because it's very specific to your situation. How much is the home? How competitive is it? Is there multiple offers? How long has it been on the market? But we're going to negotiate that due diligence fee, and you're going to pay it as soon as the seller agrees to the terms of the contract. As soon as they sign the contract and we're under contract with them, you owe them that money. And you're going to pay them that money, cashier's check. Sometimes they'll take a personal check if it's a smaller dollar amount. Zelle transfers seem to be working really well right now. And you're going to transfer that money to the seller. And then at any point in time during that due diligence period, if you make the decision to terminate the contract, they keep the money. And there's situations that come up and people are like, well, how do I get my money back? And I like to say this on video because it's a little harsh to say to you face to face, but the truth of the matter is it's not your money. The contract said that you were going to pay the seller a due diligence fee when they took their house off the market. Now, I want you to think about it more like a non-refundable down payment. And the reason I like to use the word down payment is it is credited to you at the end. So at the end of this whole process, the attorney's going to do the settlement where they're going to look at all the dollars and cents. What is the down payment? What's the mortgage? What's the seller's loan payoff? They're going to look at all that. They're going to bring all the money in and they're going to pay all the money out. And they're going to see that you've already paid the seller a dollar amount towards the purchase of the home. So you don't lose the money if you buy the house. It's just like a down payment. But if you terminate, they keep the money. So I like to emphasize this. It's important to understand that you're doing those inspections during the due diligence process, that you have the right to terminate, but the money that is paid is non-refundable. It's non-refundable. You're not going to get it back. Now, the last piece on this is the contract does say the buyer is allowed to negotiate with the seller repairs. So you might get the home inspection done and see that there is something really minor. The stove doesn't work. And you're like, hey seller, would you mind fixing the stove before we buy the house? And then the seller can say yes or no. And then you can say, look, we're not gonna go through with this purchase because we're worried the stove doesn't work. And that's why that due diligence fee comes in. If you gave them something astronomical, $20,000 in due diligence, you're probably not gonna not buy the house because of a stove. But the other extreme would be you gave them $500, they agreed to it, and you find out there's massive leak in the roof and some of the trusses are rotted and the roofing is rotted and it's a $20,000, $30,000 repair. I mean, you could ask the seller and then the seller might agree, but if they say no, you're gonna say, man, I hate to lose $500, but we're gonna terminate this contract and they're gonna keep the due diligence fee and we're gonna walk away because we don't wanna buy a house that has $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 in repairs. So just remember, due diligence period's negotiable. It ends at 5 p.m. and the due diligence fee is non-refundable. Just think, there's no scenario where you're getting it back. And actually, even to take it one step further, after that 5 p.m., the paperwork that we have, the pre-drafted paperwork to terminate the contract actually says you should seek out legal counsel prior to. And the reason is because the contract you signed has no provision to terminate. So you're in a legally binding contract with the seller, and now you're telling them, I'm not gonna uphold my end of the contract. And in North Carolina just wants to say you might wanna consult with an attorney. And so I pray we don't get there, but I like to mention it. And if your situation warrants that, we will definitely talk about it more in person. So have a great day.